Well, hello, everyone. Happy Tuesday. Well, my, there is a lot going on today, isn't there? I want to start off by thanking Bonnie for becoming a member of the channel. I really do appreciate it. Of course, channel membership helps me to anticipate how much cash I have coming in any given month, which helps me be able to make reinvestments back into doing unwoke activism and keeps me in business. So I really do appreciate it. Thank you, Bonnie, for becoming a member of the channel. Well, you know, I'm starting just a smidgen, as my grandmother would say. I'm starting to feel just the tiniest bit vindicated. If I look a little smug today, well, perhaps there's a reason for it. Perhaps the last 2 years that I have spent beating the drum that there is something wrong on the conservative right, and they're moving more and more and more close to actual authoritarianism. I have been laughed out of the building. I have been mocked. I have been ridiculed. I have been smeared. I have been lied about up and down the internet for telling the truth about the conservative right. And yet, today we found out that Christina Buttons, who, to be extremely clear, I have no love lost for this bitch at all. I'm going to tell you why. But Christina Buttons has quit very publicly the Daily Wire. Christina Buttons is a woman who used to work for FAIR, and we also have a FAIR story in the news today, the Foundation Against Intolerance and Racism. She used to work for FAIR. And I became familiar with Christina when I did an expose exposing the corruption at FAIR, which we're going to talk about in a second. And I did this about a year and a half ago. I have been the only person thus far to publicly discuss the absolute corruption and shenanigans going on at that institution that has raised tens of millions of dollars, promising that they're going to fix all the woke problems. No, they're not. They're a waste of money. And I've been the only one to talk about it. But the way I actually met Christina Buttons is she was working at FAIR when I did that expose. And she was really pissed at me. She didn't want me talking about it. And so she came after me publicly and blah, blah, blah. But then several months later, Christina Buttons left FAIR. And she left because she came to the conclusion that FAIR was not serious about fighting gender ideology. And Christina slid into my DMs and she apologized for being such a bitch. That really happened. And so I was like, whatever. Some people come a little late to the party. It happens, whatever. But then Christina Buttons continued to be an epic bitch on the internet, up to and including calling Eliza Blue, a real victim of human trafficking, a whore. Isn't that just next to godliness for women to call women who have been the victim of human trafficking a whore? And so when Christina Buttons did this, let's just say that, she and I had a little bit of a falling out. And I no longer have any personal use for Christina Buttons at all. However, we must give credit where credit is due. And I particularly think it's important for us to give credit where credit is due with people that we cannot stand. Because in this essay that Christina Buttons wrote today, she talks about the reason, the alleged reason that she's leaving the Daily Wire. It may not be the real reason. And I have receipts on that in a second. But what I have to appreciate about it is even if Christina Buttons made up a fake reason to leave the Daily Wire so that she could create all sorts of calamity on the internet in order to promote herself and her new Substack, even if Christina Buttons is a liar, she still wrote a good essay that does point out real and legitimate problems. And so what we're going to do on the stream is we are going to read her essay, and then I am going to show you just a smidge of the backlash that Christina Buttons has received for this move, including backlash from the overlord himself, Mr. What is a Woman, Matt Walsh. And you are going to see in just the select tweets that I've just pulled out, kind of at random, you are going to see exactly what I have seen brewing on the conservative right for years. And you're going to be able to come to your own conclusions about whether or not they are a political side that's worth supporting. I did not leave. I left the Democratic Party in February of 2020 after being a Democrat for 20 years. I did not leave one authoritarian party to join another one. Sam says I call them the woke right. I actually call them the woke right too. In fact, in my book, Actively Unwoke, the ultimate guide for fighting back against the woke insanity in your life, I write about the woke right. I write explicitly that woke on the right exists just like woke on the left exists. The problem that we face with this though is that the woke left is substantially more dangerous than the woke right because the woke left controls all the major institutions. So we have to functionally spend more time higher like talking about the woke on the left rather than the woke on the right simply because they have more power, they're more dangerous, they can have more impact. However, here's the thing that keeps me up at night. Let's say we get every woke leftist out of power in every major institution in America, and we're actually able to reverse this cultural revolution that we're in. Who do we replace them with? Because if the other half of the country is just as woke, they're just authoritarian in different ways, we quite literally have no one to replace them with because neither side is better than the other. It's just a matter of who has power at any given time. So that's what I think about. So we're going to be reading that essay today and we're going to be talking about it. Another fun thing that happened is that Teen Vogue, the socialist bastion that is Teen Vogue, and no, I'm not exaggerating about that. Teen Vogue is socialist. They attacked Chris Rufo and Ron DeSantis for taking over the new college in Florida. Of course, following what's going on at the new college of Florida is something that I've been doing on the channel because I worked in higher education for 10 years. I'm very interested in seeing what Chris Rufo and company do at the new college of Florida. It could create a blueprint for other things going on for other colleges in the country to be able to follow to de-wokeify their institution. And so Teen Vogue decided to do this little hit piece on Chris Rufo. And come on, man, you know you've made it when you're getting smeared in Teen Vogue of all places. So I thought we'd read that and have a little fun with it. But guys, do you mind if I take a point of personal privilege at the beginning of the stream? Please mount that like button for me if you want to allow me to take a point of personal privilege before we get into our business at hand. And I told you, listen, I am building out my Substack, which is Carlyn KARLYN.substack.com. Now I've actually been running this Substack for a while, just putting ideas out there. But at the end of December, I started building it out very strategically to become my main content hub and the main way to support my content moving forward. I am working on a whole bunch of different stories right now for the Substack, but the big ask that I have is that if you want to support the work I'm doing, if you want to keep me doing these streams, doing these investigations, showing you what's going on in the schools, like this story that I posted late last night around 3 a.m., Colorado elementary school assistant principal lies to parents to secretly transition their children. We talked about it on the stream yesterday. You can see all of the emails proving that the assistant principal lied to the parents after the parents explicitly told them, do not use this name and pronouns with my child. The assistant principal was like, well, we don't really have to legally listen to the parents. And they lied to the parents about what name they were using with the child in the school. And they found out because they got access to their emails. You can find that on the Substack right now. And I did the stream about it yesterday. But if you guys want to support the work I'm doing, it is really, really important, guys. I am funded by you. There's a reason that I have never gone to work for one of these big organizations like FAIR that is completely corrupt, or the Daily Wire that is completely corrupt, or Moms for Liberty that is completely corrupt. I absolutely refuse to get into bed with any of these organizations. And what that means is that in order to keep doing the work that I am doing, I am 100% funded by you. You are the only people that I have loyalty to in this circumstance. And my job and my only job is to tell you the truth and to present you with receipts and facts every single time I can. I do have a challenge this month where I'm trying to get 75 new paid supporters on my Substack by the end of the month. That's going to keep me on track to be able to hit the numbers that I need to hit to be able to do this as a full-time job. And the more supporters I have, the more time I have. Money equals time. The more supporters I get, the more time I have to be able to spend doing this stuff with you guys. So it's really important that I keep on track with these goals. I think I've gotten like 15 so far this month, which means we need like what 60 more to go. So we're doing pretty good. But if you can support the work I'm doing with a $5 a month subscription or a $50 annual subscription or more, there are other ways to give more if you want to. Please head over to Carlyn, KARLYN.substack.com and sign up for that paid membership. And if I do not reach my goal by the end of the month, then I'm going to have to put a paywall up on my website, which I really don't want to do because I want my content to be free for everyone. But that entirely depends on you guys. If you value the work I do and you want to support it, now is absolutely the time to do it. And if you can't financially support me yet, then I would ask that you share my work. Share my videos, share my articles, put them out there on your Facebooks and your Twitters and your Instagrams and email them to your family, etc., 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 because that helps me build an audience, which helps me gain more supporters of my work. And I totally understand if you're not in a position to financially support me right now. Not everyone is, but everyone, every single person can share my work out there. And if you're able to do that, I humbly ask that you do so because it really, really helps me out. But one of the things I wanted to show you is I mentioned that I was the very first person to talk about the corruption of FAIR. And I'm the only person to talk about it so far, even though there have been dozens and dozens of people who have come out of the Foundation Against Intolerance and Racism, and they're saying this organization is effed. Now, they can't say it publicly because most of them have NDAs, but I've talked to so many people privately about this situation. I did a series of articles about it. You can even look at the date. I started talking about this in October of 2021. And guess what happened in October of 2021 when I started talking about the fact that the Foundation Against Intolerance and Racism was corrupt? I got attacked by people on the right. It's like, Carolyn, you're just jealous. Me. You don't know what you're talking about. Me. Even though I was talking to probably a dozen whistleblowers behind the scenes, there is so much shady nonsense that has gone on that I can't talk about because they're not my stories to tell. Because if the whistleblowers want them out there, they need to come forward publicly. But they're not coming forward publicly because they're all scared of Brian Bartning, who is the CEO of FAIR. So I started talking about this, and I really want to show you guys receipts of when I have told an inconvenient truth that has turned out to be correct. So I started talking about this in October of 2021. Well, guess what happened today? What happened today is Melissa Chen, who has been on the board of FAIR since the beginning, who is one of the founders of FAIR since the beginning, is resigning from FAIR. She tweeted this out early this morning. I'm resigning from the board of FAIR for All, effective immediately. I can't officially comment on this, though I'm sure some of you know why. Yes, I do know why. Good folks still work there, and I'll continue to support them in whatever way I can. Here's what happened with Melissa Chen. When Brian Bartning and Barry Weiss and Melissa Chen started FAIR back in 2021, Brian Bartning, who is an absolute narcissist, drew up all the paperwork for FAIR. And he put Melissa Chen and Barry Weiss on the board of directors of FAIR without telling them they were on the board of directors. Melissa had no idea she was on the board of directors of the organization until months after the fact, when finally someone was able to get a hold of the paperwork to tell her, yeah, Melissa, you have fiduciary responsibility for this organization. It was beyond unethical what Brian did. But at the same time that Melissa found that out, There were all these whistleblowers coming out of the woodworks talking about the absolute corruption of that organization, talking about how badly they treat their staff, talking about all of the reasons why this organization was inevitably going to crash and burn. They weren't supporting their chapters the way they should have, and I was only able to get a few people to speak up publicly, but I was talking to a lot of people privately about this. Well, guess what? Melissa tried to fix it. Melissa went around and collected stories and evidence from all the employees at Fair at that time. This is a story that has never been told publicly. She went around and collected all sorts of stories and evidence about what was happening at Fair to try to stop it. But she was overruled. And she was overruled by Barry Weiss, and she was overruled by Brian Bartning. Because when you have 3 people on the board and 2 of them to decide to go in one direction, and one of them, which is Melissa in this case, decided to go in another direction, she got overruled by Barry Weiss and Brian Bartning. I'm going to tell you this too, another Daily Wire factoid. There is a reporter at the Daily Wire named Luke Rosiak. Luke Rosiak is responsible for the coverage about the schools in Virginia where he discovered that those kids had been sexually assaulted at schools. The school tried to cover him up. He got hired by the Daily Wire not long after that. Luke Rosiak was working on an expose to expose the corruption at Fair. I know about this because I heard about it from multiple people that Luke talked to try to do an expose via the Daily Wire to expose the corruption at Fair. Well, that expose never got published. Do you want to know why that expose never got published? Because Barry Weiss is friends with Ben Shapiro. So the Daily Wire squashed the expose about Fair because Barry Weiss asked Ben Shapiro to do it. That's my guess about what happened. I don't know that for sure. I'm making some assumptions, but I absolutely know for a fact there was an expose that was supposed to be written about this organization by the Daily Wire, and then all of a sudden that expose went away. And I happen to know that Barry Weiss and Ben Shapiro are friends. You do the math. But Melissa Chen's not the only one saying this about Fair. We also have this woman, Jessie. Jessie says Fair for All is comprised of good folks working towards a good mission, but like Melissa Chen, I can't publicly elaborate on why I left without risking litigation. Godspeed to all the employees and volunteers left in the pro-human movement. Now, why is this important? Why are we talking about corrupt organizations that are supposedly going to save us from the woke left? Because these organizations bring in tens of millions of dollars of donations, and then they don't do anything with it. And instead, what they do is they enrich themselves and they build their brand, and they never do anything productive to help real people in the real world. If they're getting tens of millions of dollars, guess who's not getting money? People who actually need it, that are doing things in the real world. You need to be concerned about corruption in your organizations, because if you are funding organizations that are just doing it just to build a brand and to inflate someone's ego, but they aren't actually making a difference in the world, that is a waste of money. And there are really good organizations out there that are doing really good work that could use a lot of the money that's been pumped into places like Fair by conservative, like by these conservative cash cows that just make these multi-million-dollar donations. I know for a fact that No Left Turn in education was denied money. No Left Turn is actually a productive organization because the donor thought that donating to Fair had more prestige. Tens of millions of dollars a year these organizations bring in. And it should be insulting to everyone that they piss that money away, they treat their staff horribly, and they don't live up to the mission that they have sold the general public at all. So I bring this up because I want to talk about Gays Against Groomers real quick. Gays Against Groomers is an organization that popped up last year, and I kind of had hope for them. I really did. But then one of their ambassadors, you know him, his name is Mike Harlow. He's a walking piece of human garbage. He represents Gays Against Groomers. And Mike Harlow has been openly harassing me and smearing me to try to discredit my work for 2 years. Now, Gays Against Groomers is aware of this. And I know Gays Against Groomers is aware of this because when I started talking about the fact that Mike Harlow was smearing me publicly, Jamie, who is the CEO and founder of Gays Against Groomers, reached out to me and we had a conversation. Judith, who is the director of communication at Gays Against Groomers, reached out to me and we had a conversation. And what was said in that conversation was that Gays Against Groomers was going to implement an internal code of conduct for their ambassadors to make it very, very clear to their ambassadors, specifically to Mike Harlow, that they were not going to tolerate this internet bullshit. And it was actually pretty great because Mike Harlow shut the fuck up for a little while and I was actually able to focus on my work. Well, that only lasted for a couple of months. And then Mike Harlow started smearing me again every single time. Every single time I do a story exposing grooming in schools, which one would think that Gays Against Groomers would want to support journalism around exposing grooming in schools. Every single time I do one of these stories and every single time it starts to get traction, what happens? But Mike fucking Harlow pops up and starts smearing me. He did it again today. He was peddling a clip from last night's stream that they took out of context. And do you guys want to know what this horde of people is saying about me right now based on this clip that Mike Harlow is peddling around the internet? Check this out. That's something else. These people are honestly, and Mike Harlow is involved in this, trying to tell people that because I went on a spiritual retreat to Peru in 2016, that is an indication that I have obviously engaged in child sacrifice at Machu Picchu. This is how crazy and unhinged this woke cancel horde is in regards to me. And this is what Mike Harlow is involved in. These are the types of smear campaigns that Mike Harlow supports. And they are quite literally going around Twitter right now trying to tell people, and I know that this is so absurd that no one would take it seriously, that I am engaging in child sacrifice because I went on a spiritual retreat that included going to Machu Picchu. And so I want to make it very clear, and I have been making it clear for a while, that I do not, and so I had these conversations with Gays Against Groomers. I had a conversation with Jamie, their founder. I had a conversation with the director of communication, and I thought everything was going to be okay. And then a couple months later, Mike Harlow continues to try to spin this shit up. He does this almost every day in my life. And I went back to them and I said, hey, your ambassador is continuing to try to discredit my journalism that is exposing actual grooming in schools. You guys are not, Gays Against Groomers doesn't expose shit. Just so we're clear. Gays Against Groomers has never once exposed the level of grooming that I expose several times a week. And so you would think that an organization that pretends to care about grooming, you would think that they would be really interested in exposing grooming in schools. But no, what they're doing now, and if Jamie or Judith want to question me on this, I have the receipts, and you know I have the receipts. I have heard from Gays Against Groomers that they don't care what Mike Harlow is doing and that it's really not their problem and they're not going to involve themselves in it, even though they've already involved themselves with it by creating an official code of conduct for their organization that they are not following. So I say this for you guys to think about. I told you in October of 2021 that FAIR is a corrupt organization. And now, oh, look, the founder of FAIR is leaving under pretty dubious circumstances, and there are other employees as well. I have a long track record of being absolutely correct about organizations. When I say there's corruption, there's always corruption. And what I'm saying about Gays Against Groomers is they're an organization that is a social club for gay conservatives, and they have no interest in actually making a difference in the world. The only thing they're going to do is make t-shirts and throw parties and have their little social club, and they all say Gays Against Groomers. They can all do these pictures and these videos, but they're not actually going to do anything. And by the way, I'm not even the only one saying this, because as soon as I started talking about this today, look what I found or was sent to me. It seems that other people are having an issue with Gays Against Groomers as well. This is from Mark Meets World 1 on Twitter. I resigned from Gays Against Groomers or Trans Against Groomers months ago. My objective and mission no longer align with the organization. I saw a shift in their messaging, and I will not support an org that doesn't truly support transsexual people. Sincerely, Mark Meets World. So you guys can make whatever decisions you want, but I have a long track record of being absolutely correct every single time that I tell you that an organization in the anti-woke space is corrupt, are not going to do anything of value, and are going to piss away every single donation and every single amount of goodwill that you try to send them. And so, just because I've been right every single time in the past, I mean, I suppose I could be wrong, but you're going to have to be the best judge of that. I just wanted to make sure that people had the information. All right, guys, please mount that like button for me if you have not already. Welcome to the stream. I'm just going to go grab a sip of this here coffee, and then we're going to talk about Christina Buttons leaving the Daily Wire because they're authoritarian shills. All right. So over the weekend, basically Michael Knowles he said at CPAC that it is our job to eradicate transgenderism completely from public life. And I was actually live on the internet when this happened. It was first during Socialism Saturday. And I have to tell you, I wanted to punch Michael Knowles in the face when he did this. Because the fact is that whenever a conservative influencer comes out and says something crazy and authoritarian that basically means that he doesn't want to let adults live their lives, that makes it monumentally difficult for people like me, because I don't care if people are trans. I don't care if people are non-binary. Adults should be allowed to do whatever the flip they want, and they're the ones that are going to have to deal with the consequences, and that's just the way it goes. I'm not okay with schools transitioning children. I'm not okay with that at all. But if you're an adult, live your best life, man. Be happy. It makes no difference to me at all. And so every time one of these assholes comes out and they want to restrict adults from doing whatever they want to do, they make the rest of us look like the fascists and the Nazis that the woke left say we are. And so I do not appreciate it. I do not appreciate it at all in any way. Every time these authoritarian assholes, and Michael Knowles can bicker all he wants, says, I didn't say transgender people, I said transgenderism. It makes no goddamn difference. And he should know better. He should know better. Matt Walsh should know better. Jeremy Boring should know better. All of them should know better. Every single time they do shit like this, they hurt the rest of us. They hurt our ability to fight back. They hurt our ability to make any progress at all. They make things more difficult for no good reason. And they're high-fiving because they're getting their clicks and their shares, and they're making a big posturing of like, I'm going to sue the Rolling Stone. I'm going to sue Rolling Stone. You didn't quote me correctly. When in fact, they are fucking us all. And the Daily Wire has done this repeatedly. They completely throw every single person fighting back against the woke left under the bus over and over and over and over and over again, and they do it purely for their own entertainment. They do it to enhance their brand. They do it to inflate their ego. While at the same time, the Daily Wire will never, and I mean never, support real people who are doing real work. It is all about them. It is only about them and what they want. And all they really care about at the end of the day is making money and maintaining their status, and that is it. If anyone thinks that the Daily Wire or Michael Knowles or Matt Walsh is going to save anyone from anything, then you assholes get exactly what you deserve. Your kids will be transitioned in schools. They will lie to you when they're doing it because people like this are going to continue to inflame the entire situation to a point where we are not able to attract anyone to our side. All these people want is to build a conservative, authoritarian, nationalist movement. That is it. These people are going to inhibit the right's ability to ever win another election again. Because guess what? When you're going around saying, we need to eradicate assholes like this, go fuck yourself. Go fuck yourself. Really, really hard. Because I am so sick of conservative shills like this coming into my chat and pretending that I'm the real problem. It's Michael Knowles who's going to save us all. Every single time people on the conservative right do something like this, they drive voters away. They drive voters to the loving open arms of the Democratic Party. Michael Knowles and Ben Shapiro and Matt Walsh and the whole merry band of men are driving voters to the Democratic Party. The reason that the GOP lost the midterms is because they didn't seem to understand that all of their abortion bullshit was driving voters into the arms of the Democratic Party. And they don't listen when people tell them this. There is no way in this universe that the Democrats are going to lose in 2024 if this is the strategy. Because every single independent voter is going to go, well, the right is a bunch of fascist authoritarian assholes, and the left might not be great, but at least they're not fascist authoritarian assholes. Every single independent voter is going to do that. Every single voter who left the Democratic Party to vote for Trump in 2020 is going to do that. Do you guys have any idea how many voters that the GOP has lost because of bullshit like this for no good reason? No good reason at all. You have people like Hellbound here. I'm voting Libertarian next year. Fuck this shit. Unless the GOP nominates Vivek Ramaswamy, I'm not voting for the Republican for president. I'm not voting for Trump. I'm not voting for DeSantis. I'm not voting for either of those. Guess what, Republicans? You can't win without our votes. So when your influencers consistently say, we don't want your votes because we are showing you that we are fascist, authoritarian assholes, and you keep supporting it because you say boneheaded shit like this, but people should stand for their principles and not let pragmatism get in your way. Congratulations, asshole. You're going to lose every election for the rest of your life, and it will be your fault. And every time you complain about a Democrat being in office, you can look in the mirror and know that it is people like you who put them there because you didn't want to listen. I can't wait to watch Republicans lose in 2024 if this is what they're going to keep doing. Absolutely can't wait. Every time Republicans drive away voters, make it very clear that they don't want us on their team at all, make it very clear they have no use for us. And he says, I don't care about winning elections. You know what? They say this. They're like, I don't care about winning elections. I have my principles. They say this until the day after the election when they're all crying and they don't understand why they lost the election. And then they go, voter fraud, voter fraud. We were cheated. It was voter fraud. No, it wasn't voter fraud, bro. It wasn't voter fraud at all. You drove everyone away so that no one wants to vote for your candidates anymore. And so you can have your principles all you like. Well, you have your principles. The teachers in your kids' school are going to be socially transitioning them because you couldn't get your shit together to try to build a coalition of voters because you're too fucking stupid to understand that elections are won by getting the most votes. And so Republicans wonder why people like me celebrate when they lose. There's nothing I love more than watching Republicans lose. And it is entirely because of bullshit like this. 100% because of it. Shayna says, as a person whose Christian faith is important to me, the religious right was what drove me to vote Democrat in the late 2000s, 2010s. Yeah, that's exactly right. And the religious right is rising on the conservative right again. And I'll tell you what, next year at this time, we're really going to see the nationalist conservative right rising. And there's nothing stopping them because their own party isn't speaking up. Their own party isn't doing anything about it. And so we're going to see more of this moral majority bullshit. And it's only going to result in the GOP losing every single election for the rest of their lives. And yet he still lost. He still lost. See, there are some Republicans like this idiot who are like, well, Trump got more votes than any other incumbent. Congratulations. Do you know how many of those votes that you've lost? How many of those votes have you lost? How did those midterms go? You have driven away every single Democrat who defected from the left to vote for you. You have driven away every single independent who defected from the Democratic Party to vote for you. You have driven away a lot of libertarians who were perfectly happy voting for you. You have driven all of those voters away. Those voters ain't never coming back. And it's because you idiots are acting like authoritarian Christian moral majority assholes. I don't know what's so hard about this to understand. I truly don't. But it seems as though Christina Buttons has finally figured this out. Christina Buttons has finally figured it out. And then we had people, Michael Knowles didn't say that. He didn't say that. He didn't say that. He didn't say that. You're misquoting him. He didn't say that. Okay, well, that's still not going to get your voters back, bitch. Whining and complaining. Michael Knowles didn't say that. You are going to earn exactly 0 voters back with that strategy. 0. None. No one wants to hear your excuses. No one wants to hear your deflection. No one wants to hear your rationalization about why your influencer is endorsing an overtly authoritarian strategy that tells adults what they can and cannot do in their lives while pretending to care about individual liberties. So you can rationalize all you want. Voters ain't not coming back. But when you're crying on election night in 2024 because you lost again, I hope you'll be able to console yourself with the idea that Michael Knowles was misquoted in Rolling Stone. So Christina Buttons has figured this out, and today she tweeted out an essay, and she said, I'm leaving the Daily Wire. I work hard getting the facts right and using precise language because of the heated nature of the gender debate and so much at stake, while their pundits dump gasoline all over it for entertainment and clicks. Now, we're going to read this essay in a second. However, I want to bring up a point though. Now, like I said at the beginning, I have no love loss for Christina Buttons. I think that Christina Buttons is a horrible, 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 horrible human being. I really have no use for this woman at all, except for the fact that she does okay reporting. You know, again, you have to give credit where credit is due. She does do okay reporting on the gender stuff, and that's important, and I like that she does that. But she is a horrible, awful human being who I don't want anything to do with. However, you have to give credit where credit is due, and she is putting these ideas out there. But what I want people to think about is the fact that I don't think Christina Buttons is telling the entire truth about why she's leaving the Daily Wire. I think Christina Buttons has a track record of doing overtly awful things, like calling a victim of human trafficking a whore. I think Christina Buttons is not always tuned in to what's actually going on in the organizations that she support, as evidence of the fact that she supported FAIR for a long time and then supported the Daily Wire until she didn't. And I don't think that Christina Buttons is being altogether honest about why she's leaving the Daily Wire, because something interesting happened when this story broke today. I was DMing, some of you know, the apocalypse has begun because Cassandra Fairbanks and I have mended fences and have an uneasy truce. I'm not saying we're BFFs or anything, but Cassandra Fairbanks and I made nice during the whole Eliza Blue debacle. And so I was DMing with Cassandra Fairbanks today because she was sharing some of my stuff that I've exposed grooming in schools. And she said to me, Christina Buttons is lying about why she's leaving the Daily Wire. And I said, what did you mean, Cassandra? And she said she was planning on leaving the Daily Wire anyway. And she's doing this as a publicity stunt to get more subscribers to her blog. And I was like, well, that sounds about right based on what I know of Christina Buttons. And I was debating on whether or not to tell you guys about this little interaction today. Because I was like, Cassandra didn't want to speak to it publicly because she had other stuff to do, et cetera, et cetera. I was like, well, I don't really have any receipts that this conversation actually happened. I don't know if I want to talk about it publicly. But then a funny thing happened. And, Cassandra talked about it publicly. So I want to bring this to people's attention as we're working our way through this, in that earlier today, Christina Buttons was replying to Matt Walsh, and we'll talk about what Matt Walsh said in a second. But Christina Buttons was replying to Matt Walsh. And Cassandra McDonald, I'm so used to calling her Cassandra Fairbanks. That's just what I'm going to call her. I'm sorry, Cassandra, if you take offense. Cassandra McDonald, formerly Cassandra Fairbanks, replied, dude, you were planning to leave anyway since January, well before Valentine's Day or CPAC. This is such an attention grab that it is just goofy. And Christina responded, I didn't tell you I was planning to leave. When you invited me on Timcast, I said I asked, but they would not let me go on podcasts. And when the time came that my book would be finished, I would ask them to reconsider letting me go on podcasts, or I might have to leave. And Cassandra says, so did they change their mind, or did you decide it was time for podcasts and Substack and needed a scapegoat? And Christina said, I haven't finished my book yet. I just couldn't continue working there. And I explained my reasons very clearly in the article. And then Cassandra says, sure, Jan. And then she says, because this looks like a publicity stunt. And it seems as though other people think that Christina Buttons has also planned this as a publicity stunt. And like I said, I don't think that Christina Buttons is a reliable human being on any level. And so it would not surprise me if she did indeed just plan this as a publicity stunt. However, just because Christina Buttons is a liar and a horrible human being and a sorry excuse for a woman and every bad thing I could possibly say about her does not mean that she's wrong in the points that she made in this essay. And you know what? I really wish that we lived in a world where people, even if they hate someone, as I absolutely do hate Christina Buttons, I really wish we lived in a world that even if people hated a person, they could give them credit where credit is due. And they could say, you know what? I think you're an asshole, but the point you're making is valid and the reporting that you're doing is good. And so we can acknowledge the good contributions that horrible people make while still keeping our frame of reference that they are horrible, vile people that should never, ever be trusted ever. But if they're coming with receipts and they're doing journalism that are exposing like really awful things in the world, you know what? We shouldn't dismiss that journalism. We shouldn't piss on it. We should take it for what it's worth. If they're making valid points about the shenanigans going on the conservative right and then becoming a Christian nationalist movement, then we should acknowledge when they're right. I just wanted to have full context that Christina Buttons is a liar and she is probably doing all of this as a publicity stunt. But with that in mind, let's read this essay. Why I'm Leaving the Daily Wire. Let me just make sure this is as big as I can be so everyone can see it on the screen. There is a critical distinction between speaking truth and building tactless, between striking and build and being tactless, excuse me, between sticking to facts and sticking it to the libs. And of course, she's got Matt Walsh and Michael Knowles and her image here because, got to have it in there for the clickbait. And of course, in Christina's story, Christina is the hero. She is the one that is exposing these horrible evil people that some of us have been talking about for a damn long time, Christina. Let's read. After much consideration, I am tendering my resignation from the Daily Wire, a publication to which I dedicated my time and passion as an investigative reporter for the last 6 months. My interest in the transgender debate became all consuming when I realized that so many of our trusted institutions, the mainstream media, government, academia, civil rights and gay rights organizations, big tech, and the medical establishment, were misled on this issue and were misleading the public in turn. As a pro-choice atheist who has consistently voted Democrat throughout my adult life, this realization, as I've written, was nothing short of world rocking. Now, what you're going to see happen to Christina Buttons in the course of this is what happens to so many people, just like me. I identify with Christina Buttons in terms of leaving the left, in terms of understanding that the party that you have always supported is not doing good and just things. However, when that happens on the political right, and then here's what happened to me. I left the left accidentally publicly. I was trotted around all over the country during 2020 to be an example of a Democrat who walked away from the party. I had a PragerU video made. I was on all the shows. They trotted me out. They all used me. I didn't realize it at the time because I thought we were all fighting the same fight. I thought we all had the same goals. I thought we were all trying to do the right thing. I thought I was trying to do the right thing. I only realized after the fact that they never cared about me or my story at all. They just wanted to use me to win an election, and I probably should have known it at the time, but my whole world was spinning, and I didn't have the perspective to see it. And what happened after the election is when I would say anything that the conservative right didn't like, or I refused to follow their talking points, or God forbid, I left the party to become a libertarian because that's a much better fit for me. The conservative right has been smearing me ever since. They're like, you were always a liberal. You were never a conservative. You're just going back to your true form. And they smear you and they insult you and they lie about you. If you step a foot out of line after they've decided to use you to advance their talking points, they will attack you in every possible way. And so I understand what Christina Buttons is going through right now. I do. She probably thought it would never happen to her. She probably thought that she was doing such good journalism around the groomer issue that it would never happen to her, that there would never be this backlash. But what you're going to see happen to Christina Buttons is that even though she really has legitimately done some groundbreaking journalism around the issue of kids transitioning, her work is really good. Even though she's done that, the conservative right is going to attack her relentlessly for this. And we're going to see examples of that because she stepped out of line. She's not following their talking points anymore. She's not advancing their ideology. And so they don't care that she's probably one of the top people reporting on these medical transitions of kids in the country. They don't care because they don't actually want to win. They just want to own the other side. When the documentary What is a Woman was released in 2022, I thought it was a brilliant commentary on the state of our culture. Matt Walsh didn't insult his interviewees, but instead let them embarrass themselves with deeply incoherent attempts to answer a question any first grader should be able to answer. Even my liberal parents loved the movie. So when the Daily Wire approached me with an opportunity to write exclusively on transgender issues with an emphasis on pediatric gender medicine, I accepted. There were difficulties working for such a decidedly conservative news and media corporation, which I anticipated. For instance, health professionals would not talk to me, much less go on the record because of their suspicion of right wing media. But I pushed through these inconveniences because I felt that much of the criticism directed at the Daily Wire staff was misguided. Their position on transgender issues was sufficiently nuanced, and their editorial standards were and remain high. I was told that the Daily Wire's stance was that adults could live their lives however they pleased so long as they kept kids out of it. Well, this was her first mistake. Her first mistake was believing that the conservative right is genuine when they say that we just believe in protecting individual liberties and adults can live their lives however they want. Just keep the kids out of it. Her first mistake was believing that. Now, I understand why she did, because I got fooled in 2020. It's very easy to get fooled, especially when you're waking up to how much bullshit the media is. You're waking up to how much the media lies. You're waking up and seeing that everything you thought was true wasn't true anymore. And you're looking at these people on the right and you're saying they're really not that bad. They're not Nazis. They're not racist. They're not any of these things. So it's very easy to get fooled by this because you have these people on the right going, we just believe in individual liberties and freedoms and that's really all we care about, and what they're saying sounds a lot more reasonable than what the left is saying, and so you believe them. But your first mistake is believing them because they don't actually mean that. Savrits, thank you for the super chat. Notice how much farther the divide becomes spiritually. The greater the polarity of people's belief systems, the greater the union. It's not through reason, it's a clash because they're incompatible. Savrits, I absolutely agree with that. It's kind of like we're dealing in an environment of, are you either going to be personally empowered or are you going to try to control people? That's what it is, isn't it? It's the classic authoritarianism versus libertarianism discussion. I appreciate the super chat. I was told that the Daily Wire's stance was that adults could live their lives however they please so long as they kept kids out of it. There was no clash between safeguarding of children and tolerance for alternative adult lifestyles, even ones that some might regard as unhealthy. It was a message I could get behind. Naruto says, with what we've seen on the QAnon shaman today, someone in the judicial system should throw out his sentence. Well, maybe, but the problem is he pled guilty. And I understand, man. I had a friend that went to jail for pleading guilty to a crime he didn't commit. I understand the pain of it, but that's probably not going to get overturned. And people should be aware of that because he pled guilty. So it's like you can't go back and appeal a guilty plea. And it's a shame. It is a shame that in our federal judicial system, like most people will end up pleading guilty, even if they're not guilty of the crimes they're pleading guilty to, because that's just the way it works. But I guess we'll see what happens in here too. Thank you for the super chat. But recent videos and posts have weakened my confidence in their commitment to this message. On Valentine's Day, Matt Walsh did a segment on his show about transgender influencer Dylan Mulvaney that has now been viewed by millions. You are weird and artificial. You are manufactured and lifeless. You are unearthly and eerie. You are some kind of human deepfake, Walsh said. Everyone who looks at you will see something pitiable and bizarre. I never watched that segment that Matt Walsh did on Dylan Mulvaney, but I'm sure if I did watch it, I would be absolutely disgusted by it. A lot of people sent it to me, and I kind of meant to watch it at some point. I just haven't gotten around to it. But yeah, Matt Walsh is an asshole. Walsh has defended these statements as good strategy because he says they rally the conservative base. Well, this is why normal people think conservatives are assholes. He adds that the goal is not to convince the other side, but to defeat, humiliate, and demoralize his opponents. Folks, this is how you lose elections. If you want to lose every close election for the rest of your life, then Matt Walsh's strategy is perfect. You are going to successfully lose every single close election for the rest of your lives if you continue to follow authoritarian Matt Walsh's brilliant strategy of humiliating and demoralizing people and basically coming across as just being mean for the purpose of being mean. Great idea, Matt. Great. Well, Tim Pool is slowly getting pulled into this authoritarian bullshit, and I really don't think his judgment should be trusted either. This triggered a race to the bottom, with other social media personas one upping each other to see who could take more extreme stances. There are transsexuals who are not ideologues, who know they cannot literally identify out of their sex, and who believe that medical transition is a choice for adults, not children, to make. Sorry guys, I'm getting a cold. I'm like perpetually sick during the winter. I can count some of them as my friends. They're trying to eradicate the public, excuse me, they're trying to educate the public using their unique position as transsexuals to deflect ad hominem criticisms that they are motivated by prejudice or perversion. Some have also participated in helping to pass legislation to protect women's sports and safeguard children. Walsh's rhetoric coincided with the sudden deluge of animus towards transsexuals like my friend Blair White for being transsexual. While Blair White deserves scorn and disdain because Blair White is a lying grifter who doesn't actually care about grooming at all. And I know this because when I was protesting a school for covering up for teachers who were sexually molesting students, Blair White supported the school because apparently hating me is actually more important than protecting kids from being sexually molested. This is how much Blair White cares about grooming. And by the way, that's true of a lot of people on the conservative right. That wasn't just her. There were other people that were doing it too. They care so much about grooming that they are perfectly okay with a school covering up for teachers sexually molesting students. So don't tell me Blair White cares about this. I know for her behavior that she absolutely does not. She's a lying grifter shill. And if you want to see how much of a liar Blair White is, you can go back to the recent video that I did where I tore apart her video of Eliza Blue and I showed you guys exactly how much she lied, which was rather immense. It's a pretty big cup. It is. Anyway, that's an aside. I can only assume that the enthusiasm generated by Walsh's hardline position encouraged another colleague of mine, Michael Knowles, to make a controversial statement at this year's CPAC. Many left-wing media outlets deliberately interpreted Knowles' claim that transgenderism should be eradicated from public life entirely as a call for eradicating transgender people, and many later corrected their headlines to accurately reflect the quote. A generous into and I want to make the argument here, and she's going to make the argument too. I don't care that Michael Knowles was misquoted. That's not the point. He Even if you quote him completely accurately, it is really not a good look. A generous interpretation of Knowles' statement is that he wishes to eradicate gender ideology, a postmodern social theory, from public life. So why not say that? On this issue, it is extremely important to clearly distinguish between people and ideas so as not to feed into left wing manufactured hysteria about impending genocides. The political right often rails against identity politics and group labels, yet many fail to distinguish between transgender people and transgender activists. True. She is absolutely correct about that. Not all transgender people are transgender activists. In fact, many especially of the older generation, find the extremism of contemporary trans activism appalling. Likewise, not all transgender activists are themselves transgender. Included in this group are doctors and researchers who pump out junk science and stake their careers on medical experimentation on vulnerable teenagers. An important lesson we've learned from the growing number of detransitioners is that excuse me, I'm going to read that again. An important lesson we've learned from the growing number of detransitioners is that transgender identities are not always fixed. Being transgender is not innate and biological the same way as being gay is. Many are socially influenced to adopt transgender identities for a variety of reasons and are medically affirmed without proper evaluation. That's actually a really eloquent way to put it. Like I said, I don't have any problem with Christina Button's journalism. I have problems with Christina Buttons being a wholly unethical and awful human being. But she does good journalism. I got to give her that. A number of those who identify as transgender today may become detransitioners tomorrow. They will need our help, especially as they face a torrent of attacks from their former community for the sin of apostasy. Many of these people are susceptible to gender ideology in the first place because they struggle with mental health problems, body image issues, or autism. I would know. I've dealt with all three. If we do not exhibit compassion for this group of young people, we will make it less likely for some to inevitably realize their mistake and reach out to us for help. As a journalist, I have to believe that there are reachable centrists, including moderate liberals, who are uncomfortable with gender ideology, but who have been insulated from serious coverage of this medical scandal. And she's absolutely correct about this. And this is what the conservative right doesn't want to hear because they are actively driving those people away. Every time they do this bullshit, every time they pull stunts like Michael Knowles did at CPAC, they are driving the reachable centrists away. One of the number one priorities for everyone working in the the so-called anti-woke space should be to wake more people up, to red pill more people. But right now, people like the Daily Wire are making that goddamn impossible because they're making the right look like the actual fascists and Nazis that the left says they are. Tim Pool is trying to make money from his audience. I don't know how you guys don't understand this. Tim Pool's highest priority is money. Matt Walsh's highest priority is money. Candace Owens' highest priority is money. All of them will tell you whatever you need to hear, regardless of whether they believe it or not, in order to get you to open your wallets and pay them money. And you consistently lose because you are listening to people who are whispering the sweet nothings in your ear that you guys get off on those sweet nothings so much. You finally have people who are telling you the words that you want to hear and only the words that you want to hear, and you say, "Here, take all my money. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you." And in the meantime, you're losing actual voters because real people disagree with all of this, and no one is actually talking to the real voters because they're listening to Tim Pool shill whatever talking points he needs you to get you to open your wallet and to pay him money. Nick says I should set up auto payments to your tip jar. Thank you, Nick. I do appreciate it. I love that the answer that conservatives give is Tim Pool agrees with us, so we must be right. Please. Like I have any respect for that guy at all. Winning over hearts and minds is difficult enough without inflammatory statements such as transgenderism must be eradicated from public life. There is a critical distinction between speaking truth and being tactless, between sticking to the facts and sticking it to the libs. I am keenly aware of the distinction between factual reporting and opinion. As a journalist and a reporter, I dedicate my days and nights to meticulously surveying data, scouring the primary literature, and choosing the best words to accurately convey the truth. But such painstaking attention into detail is rendered meaningless when the company's flagship entertainers and personalities speak impulsively and deploy divisive rhetoric for entertainment and clicks. She's 100% right. This is not a game, and we cannot afford to make these issues overtly partisan. The bodies, minds, and lives of children are being permanently damaged, and everyone, not just reporters and journalists, has a duty to approach this issue with the seriousness that it demands. In light of these concerns, I can no longer in good faith maintain my employment with the Daily Wire. There are many wonderful journalists at the organization who continue to do stellar work, and I hold no animosity towards any of them. But when my employer can no longer make good on the promise I was given at the start of my employment, my only recourse is to resign. Sincerely, Christina Buttons. And then she asked for money, which we're not going to go into, because I do think, just like Cassandra thinks, that this is a publicity stunt. I absolutely think that Christina Buttons is trying to get as much promotion and publicity as possible in order to launch her own thing. And you know what? Fine. Fine. I hope she continues to do journalism. I think that if her work is good, we should talk about it and we should share it. But there are a lot of people who don't agree. And I just want to take you through some of the responses, just some of the quote tweets that Christina Buttons has got on this. Because what I want to do is show you guys exactly what happens when someone who left the left and is working on exposing the anti-woke space. I want to show you exactly what happens when they step out of line, when they stop advancing the talking points that the conservative right wants them to advance, and when they go on their own and say, I'm not dealing with this authoritarian bullshit anymore. I want you to see how Christina Buttons has been attacked today. But before we do that, I need to take a drink of coffee. Hang on, guys. Please mount that like button for me if you would be so kind. Oh, man. Maybe it is pollen. Someone said in the chat the pollen was coming out. I don't think it's pollen here yet. We still have snow, but fun times in the winter. All right, let's look at some of these quote tweets, and a lot of these are just random. And we're going to end on the quote tweet that Matt Walsh did about this. But I want you to see this is how conservatives treat people when they leave the left, they join their team, and then they stop shilling their talking points. So this person, the real question is, why was this person hired in the first place? Classical liberal. They're saying that the Daily Wire should never hire anyone but the people they want them to hire. Good. She should leave. We don't have time for these soft political viewpoints anymore. The left is walking all over reason and rationale. They only care about mob mentality and their blind opinions. If we have people like Christina holding their hands, nothing will change. I don't think the Daily Wire should have employed this atheist to begin with, so probably better you're heading out. This woman has done some of the most impactful journalism on the medical transitions of children in the world. And the right is just shitting all over her because she refuses to shill their talking points. We will keep fighting for children. Bye, bitch. This isn't a fight that can be won with nuance. Compassionate conservatism was always a joke. Do you really think, see, this is the problem with conservatives. Conservatives actually believe that there is no way to fight back against anything without being overtly mean and cruel. What I would suggest, non-cited, is you read Christina Buttons' essay that we quite literally just read, and you think about some of the ideas that are in it. That's what I would suggest. Well, exactly. What's the alternative? Asshole conservatism. Exactly. Classical liberal. We don't want you. Do you know how many times after I voted for Trump in 2020, do you know how many times I was told, "Get the fuck out of the MAGA movement. We don't want your votes." Do you guys want to know why you lost the midterms? Because you told people to get the fuck out of your movement. We don't want your votes. Like this is not rocket science at all. Oh, but your high and mighty approach isn't concerned with popularity at all. Thanks for the announcement. Enjoy the snowflake life. As a pro choice atheist who has consistently voted Democrat through my entire adult life, that was from her article, I applaud the Daily Wire for employing a wide variety of writers, but they should have seen this coming a mile away. A lot of former leftists are more scorned than reformed and still loathe the right. And this is where the right gets it wrong. Because the right really believes that every single person who leaves the left and every single person who leaves the Democratic Party is obligated to reform themselves and bend the knee to the talking points of the conservative right. They really think that if you're not on their team, then you're a far leftist and an atheist. And this is why they lose, because that's what they expect from people. Imagine leaving the Daily Wire because they're too mean to trannies. That's the problem? Absolute lunacy. Well, this guy's definitely going to be winning over voters. Atheist, classical liberal, and future CNN panelist. Hiring your enemies is always a bad idea. One of the few things the Daily Wire does that I just don't understand. Because God forbid we might want to reach people in the middle. God forbid that's a good idea. This is why you don't trust someone who turned from a Democrat to a conservative 2 days ago. I had a lot of people say that about me. I had people go back and find a picture of me where I was wearing a communist t-shirt as a joke to troll my husband. And that t-shirt was from like 2017, which is 2.5 years before I left the Democratic Party. And they posted it all over the internet. And they were like, see, we told you she was never a conservative, never trust a Democrat. Worked out real well for them in the midterms, didn't it? Another woman who can't handle all the mean words of truth when our culture, families, and children are being ripped apart and perverted. Shocker. Fuck off, pussy. That's nice, isn't it? I'm sure this person is a really deep Christian conservative. I'm sure they love Jesus. I'm sure they go to church every Sunday. Can't you just feel Christ's love wafting off of this person? This is Jason Whitlock. He's on the Blaze. Now, the reason we can't see Christina's tweet here is because she blocked him. So Jason Whitlock wanted to drag Christina so badly that he retweeted her twice. The first time he said, "No need to write a long article. You aren't built for this kind of heat. End story." And then he almost immediately retweeted her again and said, "Good Lord, just read the bio. Classical liberal, atheist, addition by subtraction. Keep your circle tight, guys." Yeah, because it's so different than all the rest. It's so different than all the rest, isn't it? It must just be a troll. Okay. Okay, sure. This is coming from the Blaze. And now let's get to Maddie Walsh. So, for those who don't know, Matt Walsh has deliberately and egregiously stolen my work and claimed it was his. When I started talking about putting cameras in classrooms, I got over 2 million views on the idea on Twitter. I started using Twitter to vet the idea. I started using it to dispel every single objection to putting cameras in classrooms. And about a month after I did that, Matt Walsh stole all my work, stole all my talking points, went on Tucker Carlson and announced that he was advancing an initiative for cameras in classrooms using all of my talking points. And then the Daily Wire sent out an email to everyone saying, cameras in classrooms, cameras in classrooms, cameras in classrooms, using all my talking points. Never reached out to me, never mentioned my name, never gave me credit because he stole it in order to advance himself, to feed his ego, and to get likes and retweets on the internet. And he never did anything with it because it was never his idea in the first place. He quite literally never did anything with it beyond going on Tucker Carlson to say, we should really put cameras in classrooms. And I just invented this great idea about cameras in classrooms, even though he stole all my talking points. I mean, bro, you are unhelpable. Let me just be blunt. You are unhelpable. You are going to lose every election for the rest of your life. And I don't feel bad for you because you don't listen. This is going to be my approach with conservatives from now on. If they don't want to listen, if they don't want to learn anything, if they just want to come here and whine and complain about how mean the world is and how victimized they are in the world, then I'm just going to ridicule them the same way that they ridicule everyone else. I'm just going to name call them and shame them. I'm going to start implementing the Matt Walsh strategy on conservatives. If conservatives come into my chat and to start acting like the retards that we all know they are, I am just going to ridicule them and demean them until they either feel enough shame where they shut the fuck up or they say something really stupid and then I block them for it. That's going to be my strategy from now on, I think. Here's what Matt Walsh had to say. If you had concerns, you could have walked across the room and talked to me, but you never did. We are well aware of what I've achieved in this fight. I could stack up those achievements against anyone. I'm not in this for clicks and entertainment. You know that. Bullshit. Bullshit, he's not. Leave if you want, but there is no reason to lob baseless insults and question my integrity on the way out the door. It's also funny that you accuse me of wanting clicks while you use my name and picture for clicks. And not only that, but you turn against my allies in the movement who have achieved far more in this fight than you have. Christina was a leftist Democrat until a few years ago. She just got into this movement and now she feels she's in a position to tell the rest of us how we should operate. Maybe control your ego and try to learn something. We've been here longer and done more. If you have any questions about if Matt Walsh is an authoritarian asshole, exactly like I say he is, then this really should just squash all of those questions. And this is what Matt Walsh does every single time he is questioned by anyone. How dare you question me? I do the most. I am the best. No one does more than me. My track record of getting likes and clicks on the internet speaks for itself. You're just a leftist. How dare you try to tell us how to run this movement? As though, I'm sorry, did I miss the part where anyone, and I mean anyone, elected Matt Walsh to run the conservative movement? Was there a vote that took place that I'm just not aware of? Well, I think that all of this speaks for itself. So I guess we'll see what happens with Christina Buttons. Again, not my favorite person in the world, but she does good journalism, and so we beggars can't be choosers. And yeah, Reagan says, Matt Walsh is suggesting for someone to control their ego. Huh. It kind of sounds like projection, doesn't it? He does sound like a jealous ex. And you know what makes him sound even more jealous is the fact that he just kept tweeting. He tweeted one thing and then he came back and then he came back again. He's like, I'm not done yet, bitch. The Daily Wire is not going to save you. Matt Walsh does more harm to the conservative right and will be the reason that they never win another close election again. And now Michael Knowles is following in his footsteps and saying, you know what, Matt, hold my beer, Matt, hold my beer. I'm going to do exactly the same thing. And if you don't think they're all going to start trying to one up each other, you're out of your mind. These people do not want to win elections. These people do not want to build coalitions. These people don't even really care about doing anything of value in the real world. I'm sorry. They don't care. They care about being the mean kids cool clique like we all experienced in high school. Matt Walsh, congratulations, Matt. You're a good conservative Catholic, which means you are the schoolyard bully. The righteous conservative Catholic that's going to demand that all of us adhere to how Matt Walsh wants adults to live. He will be the reason that you lose. And I've shown you this over and over and over again. I hope people start listening. Maybe this will wake people up. I don't know. Oh, yeah. You know that's coming. You know that's coming right quick. I agree. All right, guys, that's the Christina Buttons thing. Now, another thing I want to talk about, and I just want to read this article real quick. Teen Vogue is attacking Chris Rufo and Ron DeSantis. Now, you know you've made it when Teen Vogue is doing a smear piece on you. Shauna says, I love that they always want ex-Dems, but then they attack them anytime that an ex-Dem calls them out. That's exactly right, Shauna. They want the ex-Dems for our votes, but if there's not an election coming up, then they'll just ridicule us and mock us and insult us. And then I remember, I cannot tell you how much Republican crying there was the day before the midterm in New Hampshire. The Republicans who had been ridiculing libertarians and people like me for months and months and months and months and months, all of a sudden, the Republicans were like, why are you voting for us? Why are you voting for us? We're going to lose. Why are you voting for us? They had been ridiculing and insulting us for fucking months. And so we were like, nope, we're not voting for you guys. Fuck you. And they're like, why? This was like the day before election. They were all crying so hard. And it's like, bro, you've been telling us for months that you don't want our votes. You've been telling us for months. Why on earth would we support you now? No, we're not fence sitters. We just think you're all assholes and we don't want to vote for you. And congratulations, you can't win without our votes. See, this is exactly the same thing. Can't win without our votes. Will shit on us constantly up until they need the votes. And then they're like, you're going to vote for us, right? 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 Because conservatives and libertarians, we can work together. We believe a lot of the same stuff. No, you don't. If you did, you wouldn't be shitting on us all the time. Yes, absolutely. I would prefer the Democrats to win every single day over the conservative right. Every single day. You want to know why? Because we don't believe that you are any different. And so, if I can watch you get your ass handed to you, when there is no value to you winning in my eyes because you are no different than the Democrats, but I enjoy watching you cry after you get your ass handed to you after you've spent the last year insulting me to my face, I have no problem with them winning. None. And I've talked about this 18 ways from Sunday, and Republicans still don't listen. Exactly. Not a fan of theocracy either, just a different flavor of woke. Anyway, let's read this article about Teen Vogue doing a smear piece on Chris Rufo. I want to see what they said. New College of Florida, the conservative Christian takeover by Ron DeSantis and Chris Rufo. In this op-ed, two new college professors blamed DeSantis administration for trying to force a conservative Christian model of education. Is Chris Rufo a Christian? I actually don't know the answer to that. I don't know. I've never heard Chris Rufo say very Christian things. He might be a Christian. I truly have no idea. Our campus is undergoing a hostile takeover. Exactly 2 years after January 6th attack on the U.S. Capitol building, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis issued a statement announcing 6 gubernatorial appointments to the new college's 13-member board of trustees. The new appointees include vocal opponents of diversity, equity, and inclusion programs and curricula that includes critical race theory, CRT, and gender studies. These appointments stunned students, faculty, staff, parents, and alumni of New College and sent shockwaves through the local community of Sarasota. More specifically, the new board includes Christopher Rufo, dun dun dun, a senior fellow at the Manhattan Institute who has distorted the meaning of academic framework that is critical race theory and spearheaded ongoing attacks on teaching CRT in schools. But I thought critical race theory wasn't taught in K through 12 schools. I mean, did I miss the memo? Is the left now admitting, after a year and a half of saying, we don't teach critical race theory in schools, are they now admitting that they're teaching critical race theory in schools? Of course they are. Shauna says, I've always been a conservative, but I also grew up in Seattle around a bunch of libs, and these cons ruin any pathways I've ever made with Democrats. All the hits I've taken with them with no loyalty. I bet that's got to burn you, Shauna. I mean, I talk to conservatives all the time, just like you, that they're like, I just want to make progress and we can work with these people on some things. And then someone throws a fucking grenade into the middle of it and they blow up everything just because they want to get an insult in. So I really do feel your pain, Shauna. I really do. I'm sorry that's been your experience. Eddie Spear, the co-founder of the Christian charter school Inspiration Academy in Bradenton, Florida, who, when doing so, had no background or training in education, and Matthew Spalding, a professor and dean at Hillsdale College, a private conservative Christian school in Michigan. So you notice they're not saying that Chris Rufo is a Christian. I mean, again, maybe he is. I don't know, but I've never heard him say anything particularly religious. Not as of yet, Murphy's Pool, but we'll have to see. Not yet. What the DeSantis administration is trying to do, in brief, is force a conservative Christian model of education onto our public college, attempting to choke out hard-won academic freedom. What does that even mean? Of course, the agenda is not lost on critically thinking students of New College. During the first meeting with new board members, a student who chose not to reveal their identity accused new trustees, such as Rufo and Spear, of having a dogmatic conservative ideology. The student boldly called out the hypocrisy that undergirds their stated support of academic freedom and a classically liberal education. You claim to support freedom of thought and education, yet you support the governor's decision to suppress entire fields of study that he deems disposable. You and him are targeting fields of study that are critical of capitalism, racism, imperialism, misogyny. Oh my words, you mean the students of New College are upset that they can't take courses attacking capitalism? How brutal and oppressive. You can't take courses attacking capitalism anymore because they're getting rid of them? Oh my god, it must be so difficult to go to college and to be denied the opportunity to take courses attacking capitalism. How will they ever survive? How is that freedom of thought? How about our freedom to continue learning these subjects without government suppression? While you're going to a public school, you are free not to attend that school. You are also free to go to a private school. Rufo's response, which we found demeaning and rude, reinforces that he is unsuited to be working in higher education. He replied at length, but seemed unwilling to take up the substance of the student's comment, concluding, "Your opinion, while it's wrong, would be welcomed." Given the epidemic of mass shootings, notably in schools and institutions of higher education, and most recently at Michigan State, a line of students demanded freedom to explore all fields of thought in a safe environment. The new board members again showed that they're the wrong people for the job at hand. Asked repeatedly how the Board of Trustees would ensure the physical safety of students, Spear unabashedly claimed, "We cannot sacrifice our freedoms for safety. That's American." While the shocked audience protested, "Whose safety?" Subsequent social media posts and interviews have demonstrated that these new trustees are here to rule. Well, that's their job. That's literally their job, is to run the college. That's what trustees do. They're here to rule rather than help us thrive in our existing environment where all fields of study are open to debate and discussion. This new primarily cis male board of trustees forced the first woman president out and installed our interim president, Richard Corcoran, a friend of Spalding and a DeSantis ally, which exemplifies the overall attempt here to conjure an era of patriarchal rule. So they're pissed off that they gave the former the former president of the college, who happens to be female, they gave that woman a golden parachute. They gave that woman such a golden parachute to leave so they could put this new guy in. And they're like, "You're installing the patriarchy." They've also voted to abolish our office that handles diversity, equity, and inclusion programs. Exactly. They voted to abolish the DEI office, which is also based. It seems clear that this small group intends to implement what Spear termed DeSantis's mandate over and against the wishes of the existing new college community. Well, DeSantis is the governor, New College is a public college, it's the way it goes. What we really need is a board of trustees that will support the continuation of vitally important programs which this community has already agreed upon collectively. We argue that a real mandate comes from the community of educators and students, further determining together what our learning community should look like. Well, too bad, so sad. That's not the way it works. Boards of trustees are quite literally there to run the college. There would be no reason for a board of trustees to exist if it wasn't there to run the college. If you don't like it, go to a different college. Shauna, thank you for the super chat. The biggest burn for me is the lies they say about trying to get the African American vote. 10 minutes of conversation with an African American will tell you that Owens shouting Reagan quotes at them is not helpful. Oh, God. The Black community hates Candace Owens. Like, Candace Owens is the worst possible person that they could have selected if their goal was to appeal to the Black community. And they know this. They know this. I went to CPAC in 2021, and there was a whole panel of Black conservatives who are far better representatives than Candace Owens. And they were telling the CPAC audiences, they were like, "You can't send this person to do this job. The Black community is not going to respond to them." And guess what happened? The entire crowd at CPAC was like, "Yes, we understand. We understand. Stop promoting Candace Owens." I'm not kidding. The whole crowd at CPAC totally was on board with this. They completely understood it. But what does the Daily Wire do? Promotes Candace fucking Owens. Candace Owens doesn't do anything. So I feel your pain, Shauna. I really do. Exactly. Candace Owens is a bitch. Precisely. Historically, access to Black studies and gender studies was won by students through campus movements across the country, including demands for courses and departments, often with the support of faculty. The same is true for women's studies departments and more recently, gender and sexuality studies. These programs help understand our world and to act within it to build community. Today, these attacks, particularly here in Florida with DeSantis's Don't Say Gay Act and Stop Woke Act, and the rejection of the proposed AP African American Studies course, students will have to work with faculty and staff to defend these hard won victories. DeSantis packing the new College Board of Trustees is a targeted effort to dismantle a 60-year-old experiment that, by all accounts, has produced a successful model of education. Again, they're allowed to do this. Ron DeSantis is the governor. They're allowed to do this for F's sake. Yeah, Byron Donalds, two thumbs up for Byron Donalds. I love Byron Donalds. I think Byron Donalds is great. I mean, wouldn't it have been amazing if they made Byron Donalds Speaker of the House? I understand that Kevin McCarthy was always going to get it, but what a message it would have sent if the Republicans had removed their head from their asses and had made Byron Donalds the Speaker of the House. Oh, that would have been so epic. Even by the standards of traditional models of education, new college graduates succeed. As our faculty wrote in an official statement, our students include a Federal Reserve Bank president, a Fields medalist in mathematics, Award winners, 86 and counting. Okay, so they've won a lot of stuff. Who cares? Every college can say the same thing. But students and faculty have also built an institution here that provides a home and a community for a population where 2/3 of the students identify as female, which the incoming Board of Trustees noted as a problem. No, they didn't. Many students identify as queer or trans, and where many students have expressed a desire to get something different from their education, then they can go somewhere else. New College is unique in its structure, using narrative evaluations in place of grades. Oh, so it's like Evergreen. Evergreen did this too. Empowering students to design an individual degree plan. That's also like Evergreen. And supporting intensive independent studies to prepare students for writing a senior thesis. Students and faculty have built an impressive alternative model of education that would be an inspiration for others, not one that is attacked and disparaged by the governor and the new board of trustees. Exactly, Murphy's Pool. They're toddlers having a wee bit of a temper tantrum. The history of this institution, too, says a great deal about how invested our community is in the struggle for a better society, as detailed in Furman C. Arthur's book about the history of New College. Just a few years after its founding, 3 students traveled to Alabama in 1965 to join the Selma to Montgomery March. The march precipitated the police killing of a 26-year-old black man named Jimmy Lee Jackson, has a special resonance in this moment. These 3 students ended up in jail, apparently for refusing to obey an officer, showing off some of their independent thinking. In the years that followed, students in New College supported a group of black high schoolers in the community as they fought for the local school board's decision to close their school. New College students helped organize freedom schools on campus for a week of action that was called in opposition to the closing. Well, okay, that's all fine, well, and good, but that was a long time ago. Things have changed. So I have to say again, so what? So basically, I mean, what this article is saying is we created a school that creates activists. And listen, there was a time when this type of activism was necessary. Honestly, I think that the activism that is described here is actually admirable. I do. but we are in a different time in this country, and this college has been taken over by woke ideology, and they're trying to turn it around. Nothing wrong with that. I'm going to skip through some of this. Okay. It will take this kind of work and community engagement to defeat the gains made by movements of students and faculty who came here before us. Perhaps in this struggle, we might also create new horizons for what we want and need on campus today. As faculty, though only visiting. These are visiting faculty members. That means they're not real faculty. We are committed to the defense of our gender studies program and the embrace of diversity, equity, and inclusion community standards. Well, they'll be leaving soon, so it won't really matter. The contributions of faculty and staff who do the work should not only be defended, but praised and multiplied amid the hostile environment created by the state government and new members of the Board of Trustees. Of course, the struggle extends far beyond the bounds of our campus, moving across the state and throughout the nation. We encourage students, faculty, and staff to unite and learn the history of your institutions, the particulars of how our beloved programs, offices, and departments were established on campus, and to imagine what else we might win if we take initiative to build more in the face of these blatant attempts to turn back the hands of time. Do you guys notice that the vast majority of this article has no substance to it? The article started out basically saying Chris Rufo and Ron DeSantis are bad. And then the entire rest of the article has nothing to do with Chris Rufo and Ron DeSantis. And now they're about to get to their big ending. Do we think they're going to provide evidence that Chris Rufo and Ron DeSantis are bad? Because they haven't so far. They're just saying, these people are bad. And then they're like, here's all the things that have happened at our college. Let's see. As Black history and Black studies scholar Khalil Gibran Muhammad has pointed out, Florida is a laboratory of fascism. Fighting the move towards fascism will take students, faculty, and staff working together with the broader community. Oh, so I was wrong. It's not just that Chris Rufo and Ron DeSantis are bad. It's that Chris Rufo and Ron DeSantis are literally fascist. We are here to defend the freedom of students to learn in their chosen environment with programs and classes that align with the school in which they are enrolled. We are here to defend freedom of faculty members to teach what we have spent our lives studying and were hired to help students understand. And we are here to defend the freedom of staffers to organize in support of the diversity, equity, and inclusion that stand as the central community agreement, one that we desperately need in this state and country. And that's it. So no evidence at all in Teen Vogue that Chris Rufo and Ron DeSantis are literally fascist. And I found out about this today because Chris Rufo responded. He said, in which two new college professors take to the pages of Teen Vogue to criticize the higher education reforms in Florida, there is nothing that demonstrates more seriousness of purpose and dedication to passionate scholarship than writing for Teen Vogue. And then he followed up and he said, let's look at their CVs. Oh, how to subvert the capitalist white supremacist university, radical black feminism. Yasmin, we got our radical black feminism. We got to do radical black feminism this week. I got to look that up. Queer theory, staging environmental racism, radical theater, and environmental movements. Pure left-wing Mad Libs. Luckily, both are visiting professors. So I hope you guys enjoyed that article. I enjoy a good Teen Vogue hit piece. And I'm going to tell you guys, Teen Vogue is seriously socialist. It really is. If you haven't taken, just like I know most of us have no reason to read Teen Vogue, you might make the mistake of thinking that Teen Vogue is about like fashion for teenagers. No. It's about socialism. It's about socialism for teenagers. I swear to God. So it might be like I should really check in with Teen Vogue more often to see like what nonsense is coming out of their magazine today. I really, really should. But guys, that's all we have for right now. Now, because it is Tuesday, this is not my last stream of the day. It is but the first stream of the day, and I will be going live in about 3 hours at 9:30 with Joshua for Nothing Remotely Controversial. It's news, it's psychics, it is a lighthearted stream that we do on a weekly basis. We have a whole lot of fun with it. I hope you will join us at 9:30 and you get to ask your questions of Joshua. And apparently, Smoony is going to ask, did Mary, Queen of Scots, plot the murder of her husband, Lord Darnley? What a great question. I love that period of history. And Joshua, who is a professional psychic with over 20 years of experience, is going to use his psychic powers and his tarot cards to help us figure out, did Mary, Queen of Scots actually plot the murder of her husband? We'll be answering many other questions as well. And so join us at 9:30 tonight. Even if you don't believe in psychics, it's still really fun, and we have a great time with it. We love you, Carlin. Keep speaking the truth. Thank you, Moonlight and Starlight. I really do appreciate it. Oh God, I love Amber Lynn. I do. I'm such a nerd over that period of history, Yasmin. All right, guys, I'm going to take off for right now. I'll see you in about 3 hours. Mount that like button on your way out the door, and we'll see you guys soon. Take care.